How do you make a great looking widget using SwiftUI? This is a design challenge where we're going to learn how to use SwiftUI to implement a UI that looks something like this. We're going to implement the widget for the Step Up app as a way to explore some interesting layout in SwiftUI. So let's get started. This is on the App Store. I'll have a link down below if you want to go ahead and download it. I am on the leaderboards. I am 5th in the world. So get this app and compete with me on your step count. So let's take a look at the UI. I'm going to break this down so that we can think in terms of layout. All right. So when we're working with SwiftUI, everything is considered a stack. And so we're going to consider this whole thing to be a vertical stack. And so the stack is going to have this element, then a spacer, then another element, and then this, and then this. So let's try and break down what those are going to look like. So at its most basic level, when we have a label and another label, these are in a vertical stack. So we call that a V stack for short. If you want to get access to the code or the course, I have the course link down below, and I also have another link for the source code. The source code for all of these lessons are free. You can get access to them if you just enter your email address here. And if you want to learn more about my class, you can also join the course and get access to all of the videos all at once. And I'm not just going to have source code for this lesson down below. I have source code for the last lesson, the next lesson, and this lesson. So if you want to get access to all of that code, click on one of those links down below. Thanks for watching. Hit the like button if you learned something, or comment on the video. It helps me understand if you're struggling with this or if I need to refilm something. Then we have a spacer right here. The spacer is this area in between that's filling up this space to the margin. And I guess it would, if I could draw this in line, it'd be sort of like this. So that's kind of our spacer. And then we have to think about how this is going to be structured, but we at least have an image and a label. This could be another vertical stack right in here. So we could have a vertical stack right here of 2 labels, so that days is always the last word and streak is always on the next line. And then we've got another complex structure. So you can either break this down into like 2 element components, or what I think might be easier is we do a horizontal stack, we do another horizontal stack, and then we have a V stack holding that element. And so that's how we're going to break down this effect. And then a simple algorithm that I came up with for this would be pass a number of 1 to 10 or 0 to 10. And if the number is greater than our target, then we're going to use an alternate color. So that's essentially what we're going to do. We're just going to do 5 in a row, and then we're going to do another 5 in a row. We'll just break it down into like simple little pieces. And then our whole UI is just the combination of this. Now, the one thing I want to point out is UI likes to snap to the edges of the content. And so you'll notice that when I drew these rectangles, they are sort of matching the width of the content. That's going to pose some challenges here. We've got a potential space here. We've got a potential space here in order to shift our content around. And so unlike auto layout constraints, we need to think a little bit differently when we're working with SwiftUI. So let's dive into the project. You can see this is an example of it running. So I've got a mock-up from the demo project, and we don't need this. We're going to be looking at 9.1. So this is the Step Up widget. We're going to go into Step Up widget. The stuff that I'm demoing is based on my demo. You're going to start with the begin if you want to follow along. I'm going to start with the end, and that's going to have the final code in it. So you will find the final solution in end of whatever I present in this video. And also, one of the things I want to do is I want to set a timer and see how long this is going to take. So let's start a timer, and let's see if we can beat the clock. I'm hoping for under 25 minutes. Depends on how much I talk. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start preview with Command Option P, and I'm going to see, do I have keyboard shortcuts on? Keyboard shortcuts are on. So Command Option P, bottom left corner, you will see little keyboard shortcuts. That's going to start up the simulator. Now, one thing to note, when I've been doing some of these design challenges, sometimes this simulator stops updating the widget. And that can be very confusing because you'll be modifying stuff and you don't see it. I had that issue when I was working on this portion down here. I had that issue when I was working on the original text up top. I couldn't figure it out. I was like, I'm definitely running it and it's not updating. So we're going to learn how to deal with that. My trick is just to open up a different file, come back, and that should get it to rejigger itself. All right. So we are going to be looking at this. If you open up the project, you can hold the Option key and click the chevron, the little arrow here, and that's going to that should open up everything. If it doesn't, do it again. There is an Xcode bug in a previous version where that didn't work. I don't know if that is now fixed. So we're going to look at the step up widget.swift file. If you open that up, there is going to be some stuff. We don't really care about everything. We're focused right now on just the UI design. So you're going to scroll down until you see this right here. And then there's this step up widget right here. So that's what we're going to focus on for this tutorial. I'm going to move some stuff around. Let's make this bigger so that we can see the widget. And the first thing that we are going to do is just focus on structure. So a V stack is what we had all this content in. That's just going to align everything in the center. I don't want that content as is, but we can actually just modify and edit this, or we can write it from scratch. So let's go ahead. What elements do we see on the screen? So based on my current design, I'm going to hard code everything, because when we're prototyping, we don't care about connecting to data. We just care about, can we make it look like we're like the functional thing? And then later on is when we will connect it. So let's take a look at this and see if we can get it to be functionally UI complete. So next up, we're going to do steps today. And there is type over for some of these symbols. You're going to notice I'm not going to look at the styling just yet. Okay, so I know the next thing, I'm just going to build it from scratch here. The next thing I'm going to want to do is I need a horizontal stack, so an H stack. And we are going to put an image and a system name. I'm not going to use the image that was in this design challenge. Instead, I'm going to pull one from SF Symbols. And then we are going to do a text. But I think that this would be easier with a V stack. So I'm going to have two text values. One is the days. And then if you just write this and you keep typing, you can get to the end of the line. Sometimes it auto completes these characters. So I'm just going to type over them. And we've got streak on the next line, and that will do us for that. Now we don't see the icon yet. So let's open up SF Symbols. If you watch my video on how to do that, you can watch that and learn how this works. We are going to look for something like lightning. So if we search for lightning, if I don't know how to spell it, lightning, nothing. If we search bolt, we get a bolt symbol. So we're going to go with this symbol. That's what I used in this demo. And it looks like I did the bolt without the fill. We can choose either one. I think I'm going to go for the bolt with the fill. I think that's going to be a little bit more fun. So we're going to deviate a little bit from my demo code. That's actually not what I wanted to do. I want to copy the name, which is going to be Command-Shift-C. And if we go back here, it's just bolt.fill. All right, so that's starting to come together, but the alignment's all a little bit wonky. And then we've got our bottom thing. And so I'll just have a to-do for that. So we're going to have a progress indicator. Okay, so let's get this looking a little bit better. For this top portion, and actually for all of the code, I don't know if we can just use monospace down here, but let's give it a go. See what happens. All right, so it worked. Great. So that's monospace. It might not work once I start stylizing fonts. Fonts. I think if I start doing the sizes, that's going to mess it up. So I'm going to need this one to be bold. We could just do bold, and then I want it to be monospaced. So that'll keep it monospaced. The next thing, I want steps today to be smaller. So we're going to do font, and we're going to have to create a system font of size. Now let's start playing with some numbers. So I'll start with 20 just to see what it looks like. Okay, so 20 is way too big. We can see it's now on 2 lines, so we don't want that. Let's change that to 10. Might be too small. Go for 13. And you just pick some numbers that are going to work. That feels to me somewhat correct and acceptable. So I think I'm going to go with that. 13. You could try 14. It's a little bit bigger. Going to take up more space. I think 13 feels like a differentiator. It's a little small, but you can play around with these. And I guess it's still doing our monospace, which is actually good. I wasn't sure. So we might be able to we don't need this one. So I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that applying monospace at the end. So these things sort of stack up. So monospace is going to get applied to this one. This one is going to get applied to everything in here. I don't know if that's going to affect our bolt. It might affect the layout of the bolt, but that shouldn't really matter. We really just want to have this sort of arcadey, old school vibe that we're trying to get. And so by making everything monospaced, we can do it in one spot, in one line, rather than doing it here, 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 and here. So we can turn 4 lines into a single line of code. Up next, we are going to update. Let's copy our code that we had here for the steps today and use the same for the streak. That feels too small. I don't know if that's... Yeah, I think both of those are going to be that. So what I'll do is I'll do the control option and then right bracket. And we're going to apply this to the contents of the VStack. So what you'll see here is now, instead of being big, we've got the day streak smaller. So the prominent thing, and this is what it comes back to some of those design skills that I want to talk about. We can make something stand out more by reducing the font size or changing the tone of the color, changing the value of the color, making this shade gray lighter rather than pure black. Those are ways that we can differentiate. In this case, what we're going to see over in this widget is the boldness makes this stand out. The smaller fonts make these sort of go back into the background a little bit, but they're still there. The content's still there. Okay, so now that we have that, our alignment's not correct. So how do we fix that? Well, we want things to start on a leading edge. So the VStack have a bunch of different parameters. We've got alignment, spacing, and content. We're going to start typing in alignment, and we're going to do a dot to pull up the options. And we're going to look for leading and just do that. And we're going to see that everything is now leading. Now, the next challenge is this stuff is smushed together, and we want to separate the steps today from the little lightning bolt. How do we do that? Well, we have a feature in SwiftUI called a spacer. So if we do a spacer here, what that's going to do is a spacer wants to expand this way or it wants to expand this way. And we're going to use that to our advantage to get the content to shift around. Now you're going to notice that this stuff is still kind of centered. And why is that? Well, if we were to add a background color, that might give us some clues. So let's just add a simple background. And when we do that, we see the default background color is a slight shade of white. If you wanted to see this more clearly, let's put on a yellow. That'll stick out. And we're going to see that the content is snug against the content width. Now, to get this to go to one of the sides, we need to add a spacer. So let's go ahead. Where can we add a spacer in this UI that might shift the content over? I'm am wondering if we could get that to work if we put it in here. So we already have a horizontal stack, which is going to be this. So it's got this element and then it's got the labels next to it. And to get this to shift over, we could put a spacer right on this edge and shove everything, I guess, this way. So let's see if that works. I'm going to click in here after this font. We're going to type spacer and shove everything over, and voila. We have updated the UI to be leading edge and all the way on the leading edge rather than somewhat on the leading edge just because the content didn't fill the entire area. So that's how we can do that. That's how we can use some background colors for helping us understand the layout. Next up, how can we get the color? Well, we can just set the foreground style to a green color. So doing that, it's now green. But what has happened is we have a white background and the contrast is missing. So if I undo that, if I comment that out with /, we'll see that the contrast here is great. We can read it. Once we do this, it's hard to read, but that's because we're not matching the design. So let's match the design. The design calls for a black background. So then you're thinking, oh, I know how to do that. We'll just do .black and we'll be done. And you'd be close, but you'd be wrong. So that's not going to work. So what do we need to do? Well, I'll give you a clue. It's not something in this area. We need to modify something somewhere else. And that somewhere else is going to be this next thing. So this is the step up widget. This is the app intent configuration. It is setting things up, and we can see that our setup widget entry view is right here. This is what's going to be displayed on the home screen. And this has a container background. How interesting. So we are going to take this container background. Instead of doing .fill.tertiary, let's see if we can just do .black and force it to always be black. So if we do that, now the colors pop. Now it actually feels similar to the design that I have right here. And what are we missing? Well, we're missing our indicator. So let's work on that next. All right, to get that indicator, we're going to create a new structure here. And this is going to be a progress. Let's call it a step progress view or something like that. Okay. Every view needs a body. So let's go ahead and start typing body, and I will press enter for autocomplete. And then we are going to need a VStack. And with the VStack, ooh, I noticed a bug, but we'll come back to that. Do you see a bug in the layout? Take a look. Is something amiss? Let me know. All right, so with the VStack, what we're going to want to do here is do a for loop of some kind. So I want to have 5 elements in a row, and we can use the for each, this one, that's going to give us an integer. So this one, if we look at the method signature down here, it says a for each data is a range of integers with a content where it's going to pass us the integer, and then we give back a view. So that's perfect for what we need to do. Let's go ahead and make 5 equally spaced elements. So I'll insert this. We'll start with 1. We don't need to start with 0. We could make this easier to read. So 1 to 5 is our range. And then we are going to press enter here, and we are going to do our index or number, might be more readable. And this is going to complain to us because we actually need to give it the ID. And then we're going to do .self. And then that should make that more agreeable. And next up, we are going to want to have a rectangle like this. And then we're going to do a foreground style. And for the foreground style, let's do primary and see if we can get something on the screen. All right. So this is a V stack, and we're still going to have to update it, but let's put it in where our to-do is. So we had that to-do. Let's do a step progress view, throw that in there, and we've got 5 views like this. Now, if we want them horizontal, we're going to have to add a H stack, a horizontal stack. So let's go ahead and do that. And we'll wrap this for each in that H stack. All right, so that's looking better. Now let's set a max height. So if we do frame and then height, we press enter, we are going to play around with 10. See, how does 10 look? 10 looks too big. Let's go down to 5. 5 looks about right. We could try 6. I think 5 is a better number. So let's go to 5. And how would we get 2 of these? Well, we can just copy and paste this structure, and voila, we have 2. Now, something doesn't look right, and that is the spacing. So let's adjust the spacing to maybe be a little bit tighter. It looks too tight, so let's go to 5. How does 5 look? Maybe 4, 5. 5 is looking pretty good, but the spacing is too far apart. So how can we make them a little bit thinner and make them closer together? Well, we can adjust the H stack spacing. So down here in line 78, I am going to say, let's try doing 1 space. What does that look like? Does that match our design? Not quite. Let's try 2. Oops, 2. Not quite. 3, 3, or 4. So you can see that like 3 or 4 is going to look a little bit better. Let's start with 4. And we're going to have to do the same thing down here. We could copy and paste this again. I'm just going to write it out. So we add the spacing of 4. And that's looking approximately right to me. They look maybe a little bit tighter. So let's go down to 3. And this is where it might be nice to have a constant where you're reusing stuff. So let spacing H space equal 3. This would have to be a CG float. And if you wanted one value that you could update, that would be this and this. So now we're updating it here and here. And so now if I want to try 5, I can edit one place and we should see it update. If I did 10, we should see an obvious change right over here. And that's obviously not the look that we're going for. So if we go back to 3, we should see the change over on the right above me. Okay, so that's looking really, really good. Let's actually compare this to the design that we had over here and see how far away we are from this design. So I know we've been sort of coding this up to the other design, but how does it look here? And have we represented everything that we need to? So we don't quite have the same symbol. We could try and chop that up and extract it. And we don't quite necessarily have the same font. Let's see what our zeros look like. Okay, it's not bad. There was a problem that I mentioned that we had here, and that is we don't have a leading edge here. So if we want, whoops, let's try that again. Here, streak is centered. 150 days is centered. So we want them to have a leading edge. So we're going to grab wherever that was. So this is 151 days. And this is in a V stack, which is a vertical stack. We're going to do the alignment. And we're going to do the leading edge. It inserts this code. I'm just going to delete all of that and then just rewrite the closing parenthesis and then the opening curly bracket. Great. So that is matching the design, but there's still a problem. Notice how 2 of these are going to be a little bit darker and the others are going to be brighter. We need to come up with an algorithm that is going to allow us to do this. And so to do that, we are going to create a count. It's going to be an int, and this is going to get passed in. So we want to pass in the count, and it's going to be a 1, a 0, a 2, etc. So how can we change the styling? The SwiftUI way of doing things is to really rely a lot on the ternary operator. And so we'll do that right here. We are going to have an expression that's going to determine, do we use the primary or the secondary color? And doing that should give us the effect that we want. So let's say if number is greater than, in this case, it would be, let's say count, the number that we're passing in, is greater than number, then we want the primary color. Otherwise, with the else condition, we're going to say secondary. And let's see what happens. Boom, look at that. That's kind of cool. So we have said if we are greater than number, so count, which is the value that we're passing in from up here, we're passing in 2. 2, does that work like we expect? No. We have an off by 1 issue. So we need to say if count is greater than or equal to number. So in this scenario, we're passing in 2. So is 2 greater than or equal to 1? Yes. Is 2 greater than or equal to number? Yes. Is 2 greater than or equal to 3? No. Okay, so we now have that first row working. And so how can we take the same type of logic? How can we apply it to the next one? Well, we can just copy and paste, and we would be almost done. So let's see how that works. And is that working right? No, we are applying it on top of this one. So let's get rid of that one. That's going to fix that first problem. Now let's fix the next problem. So why doesn't this work? Well, we're just repeating what we did up top. But if we think about it, so this is going to be 10 elements. We're basically taking progress bars, and we're going to have 10 progress bars. And so we want to count starting at 0 up to 10. 10 is you are done walking. You've reached your goal. And so what we can do here is we can add 5, and we're pulling 5 from the previous section. Since I'm showing 5 here, and I know that I'm only going to have 5 more, my starting condition is going to be number plus 5. So let's run through this. If I have the count set to 1, or let's say 2, if count is 2 and we're down here and we say, okay, is 2 greater than 5 plus number? And number is going to be 1, so 6. So is 2 greater than 6? And the answer is no. So this one doesn't get the primary color. We do the same for this one. Is 7, is count greater than 7? No, 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 no. Now let's change count to be 6. What do we see? Well, when count is 6 greater than or equal to number being 1 plus 5 for our first element? And the answer is yes. So we use the primary color instead of the secondary. And that's how we get this effect. That's how we build this up. And you will see that we can now run through all of the numbers. I'm doing it too quick for it to update. So here's 8, 9, 10. And we can go back to 1. We can do 3. We can do 17. 17 is totally full. We could do 0. What happens if we do -1? Okay, so it doesn't seem to break anything. We've tested the edge cases. That's a good UI. So let's put it back on 2. And that's looking pretty sharp. Okay, I think we're done. So that was 24 minutes and just under 25 minutes. All right. So hopefully this was interesting and helped you understand how to create a design. We have a reusable widget right now that allows us to get the total number of steps. You could make this more accessible if you needed to in order to sort of read out what these values are, because this doesn't mean anything to anyone who's just looking at it. So from an accessibility standpoint, there's room for improvement. And same for these other labels, sort of merging them together as a single unit, merging this together as a single unit, merging this together as a single sort of progress indicator. But that is just accessibility wise. In terms of attaching the data, what we would have to drive is we have to pass in the progress, we need to pass in the day streak, and we need to pass in today's steps. So there's 3 pieces of data that we need to pass in. Let's move these up to the top just so that we can keep track of them. So we're going to have steps, which is an int. We are going to have our streak count, which is an int. And then let's say progress complete, which is going to be an int. And this is going to be, let's say, 0 to 10 plus. So that's going to be our range. And that's the information that we need to pipe in. Okay, so to format this, let's play around with we can format based on a number, and we can set the grouping to be automatic. And is there anything else we would need to do? I think that's it. So let's see what that does. Apparently that doesn't like me. So I'm just going to do a quick Google search. So when I don't understand something, I just look it up. I don't know how to do all this stuff off the top of my head. I mainly know how to do this one because I ran through it once right before this video trying to figure out how I would want to do it. Okay, so how do we format text? These are not giving us what we want. Dot number rounded. I think what we're doing is correct. So let's just play around with this, see what that does. That does not like us. Maybe this doesn't work on a widget. I'm not sure yet. We do currency. Oh, hold on. I think I am. I think it's because we're still a string. Yes. Trying to apply that to a string instead of an integer. So if we just set this to 2420, we set this to 151, and we set progress complete to something like 2. Remember, this range is going to be something like that. It's going to be 0 up through 10, however you want to annotate that. So that's going to format our first number. Let's actually go ahead and grab that value. So this is going to be our steps. And then this will be down here. We're going to do our streak count. Now here, do we want to format this? We might want to format this again as a number, and we might want to have grouping. What if I get into the thousands? We might want to have that to be formatted. Now let's take a look. If I didn't do this formatting right here, we would have to write it, hold on, like this. I'll refresh the preview. Oh, did I put that in the wrong spot? How did it do that? I see steps today right here. That doesn't make any sense to me. Let me switch views and see if this is just making stuff up. I'm not following that. How does that work? Okay, so what was happening is the number was appearing on the second line instead of steps today, but I still had steps today. It didn't really make sense to me. Let me just try that as a sanity check right here. Okay. So why did this not work? You see how it's working now? So I swear sometimes there's like some maybe caching issue where this doesn't work like you expect. So keep that in mind as you work on working with SwiftUI. Sometimes things, especially these widgets, can be a little bit finicky. All right, so we've now tied this to an actual data value, and we've tied streak count to a data value. So we should be able to just append or change, and we will see 15 days. Here, you might want to you have to think about, and I'll just say this is a future thing, day quantity. There are formatters for this. So we might want to use another formatter that can actually pluralize days or day. So what if it's a 1 day streak versus a 3 days, 15 days, 3 days, 3 day, 15 days, 15 day. Actually, I don't know 1 day streak, 2 day streak. That might be a translation issue. 151 days streak is not how you would read it in English. So in English, it would be a 15-day streak. So I think we don't actually need to have plurality here. You might need that in other locales. So I think that's a bug. I think it should be 15-day streak. Let's see if I transcribed it wrong. What does it actually say? And the last thing I want to show you is days. So I would say that's a localization issue since this was a French developer. And I didn't catch it until just now. Okay, so what have we learned? Well, we now have data that can totally change this, and this is super fun. The fact that we can just like make this update based on the data, and it's not because we didn't hook it up. So let's hook up our last variable, and now we see we have 4. So this is driving your inputs. Now all you have to do is whoever's creating this just needs to pass that information in. So if that's coming from your configuration or something like that, that's where you're going to hook that in. And we're not going to cover that, but I do want to cover how can we install it. So I've got my widget. Let's go ahead and install it. I'm just going to remove this to show you how to do it from scratch. So we're going to go ahead and run this on the iPhone simulator. So this is an iPhone 16. Don't worry about this. I don't think this really matters. It just needs to put the app over there, and the app doesn't do anything yet. But once it does install it, that error message doesn't really matter. It's installing it right now, and it's installed. So we can just hit OK. And now we're going to do a long press on the simulator background on the home screen. We're going to hit Edit, Add Widget. Now, this does not show anything until you start typing. It's like completely blank, which is weird. But if we start typing step, whatever you named your app, so in this case, it should be step up count. We click on that. And now we see this really snazzy interface where we can see different versions of this UI. And I think I have a screenshot of the actual app. Let's see, is it? Is it? So this is the actual app. So we're getting a similar, oh, I need this. Oh, I don't have that connected right now. We're getting a similar style, but this is actually Apple's interface. And this just sort of shows you how it stretches and fills. For the first two, it kind of makes sense for this one and this one. This one, there's some extra space where we can put another widget like the calendar widget to sort of show how many steps have happened. But we've at least made the widget work for the small size. So if we do add widget, you will now see this on your desktop. If we do the same thing on iPhone, if you've got your iPhone hooked up, you can then transfer it on over here and see your widget there. All right. If you enjoyed this, hit the like button or comment down below, whether you're on the course or if you're on YouTube watching this. Thanks for watching. I'm going to have more teardowns like this that are going to be in the paid course. So this is the only one that I'm going to offer for free on YouTube. If you want to get access to the code or the course, I have the course link down below. And I also have another link for the source code. The source code for all of these lessons are free. You can get access to them if you just enter your email address here. And if you want to learn more about my class, you can also join the course and get access to all of the videos all at once. And I'm not just going to have source code for this lesson down below. I have source code for the last lesson, the next lesson, and this lesson. So if you want to get access to all of that code, click on one of those links down below. Thanks for watching. Hit the like button if you learned something or comment on the video. It helps me understand if you're struggling with this or if I need to refilm something. And I really appreciate your time. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.